morning, guys. Welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna talk about if you want to buy an RS3 or you're thinking about it, because I've seen you guys in the comments saying, oh, I want to own RS3, RS3 is my dream car. Let me tell you guys exactly what you need to kind of know before and what you need to kind of expect, because this car definitely is not a cheap vehicle, and I want you guys to know all the quirky things and the things you need to consider before making the purchase. I think I've owned this car for about almost half a year now, and I drive it. I put on 10,000 kilometers in about those months, and I think I know the car pretty much in and out, and I've gathered some useful feedback. So I think, you know, now it's a time to make a video and really let you guys know how I feel about the car and exactly you know, what are the things you guys should look out for. This car is just such a fun car to drive, and there are things I'm gonna say that I kind of don't like, or I kind of wish it's different, but I mean, every car has, you know, a good or bad. If you want me to end this video in 10 seconds, yes, buy this car, own this car, drive this car, have fun with it, because it's 100% will bring a smile to your face. It's just so fun. I mean, it's just so much fun, and I can't, you know, I try not to drive it daily, but man, I tend to drive it every day because I just love it so much. But before I jump into the video, let's hear from today's sponsor, Carly. Now, thank you for Carly for sponsoring today's video. Now, what is Carly? Carly is a OBD scan tool that will diagnose your car on the fly. Now, being in the automotive industry, I've seen so many countless customers come into the shop and say, hey, I got a code, I have a check engine light, I don't know what it is. People just tend to pay 90 bucks, 100 bucks for a diagnose fee, for labor fee, for no reason. So if you have your own OBD scan tool, you can do that at home or on the fly. Whether you get a check engine light or something is not going correctly, Carly got you covered. So let me show you guys how it works. All you need to do is simply plug this bad boy into the OBD port, go to the Carly's app, and connect via Bluetooth. Now, this is already connected, and you guys can see there are different features. For example, the health, the customization, and also a used car check. So for example, if you have a code or you're wondering if your car is performing up to the optimal standard, you can go to the health tab and you can check for all the codes. It's going to give you a full diagnosis of the car and what's going on, and will give you the exact code. Now, another cool feature they have is the customization section. Depending on the certain car, you can have different customization options. On certain vehicles, you can code the lights. For example, if you double click the unlock button, you can code it to the all window lower or go up. And also, if you hit the lock button, you can change how many times your light blinks and vice versa. Or you can even change how the menu customized as well. So for me, it is such a handy tool. It's just nice to have in your back pocket just in case something happens. You want to know on the fly exactly what it is. It works on both iOS system and Android as well. So no matter what kind of phone you have, it will work. And it also covers hundreds of car manufacturers. Doesn't matter if you have an Audi, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, whatever you got, it will get the job done. So click the link in my description box below. Check Carly out, use my code for a discount. I strongly recommend you guys trying it out, or at least just check them out. So thank you, Carly, for sponsoring this video once again. Now, let's talk about the first thing. The first thing I think you guys should consider is the transmission. This car does not come in a manual. So this is a 7-speed DSG DQ 500 transmission system, and it is a blast to drive. Now, for me, when I was deciding buying a new car, I was deciding between the RS3, the RS5, or the BMW E92 M3. And that car, I would have get a manual transmission, because I really want to just feel the raw, you know, the drivetrain, the transmission of the car. I think because the last car I had was a DSG, a manual car would be better. But you know, because of other factors and just how the package the RS3 offers, I kind of settle on the RS3. Now, going in it, I didn't really expect in terms of anything blow me away, just because even on the last S4, it was a DSG. It's a different DSG system. That one was a DQ 250, but I had a DSG tune on there, so it was already pretty quick. It was already shifting exactly kind of how I want it. So I didn't really go into this car with that big of a with the impression like, oh, this transmission is gonna blow me away. Boy, was I wrong. let me tell you, this is probably the best DSG transmission I've ever driven. I've driven, I don't want to say lots of cars, but a good amount of cars. And in terms of performance-wise, you know, the only other transmission that will come close would be a BMW DCT system. That car I drove, it was the M4 competition, and that DCT system was pretty good. I gotta tell you, it felt pretty similar. It's obviously a different feeling, but that was pretty good. This, if you compare this to a normal DQ250 system, for example, the Audi S4, S5, the B8, this is just not even in the same market. And right now I'm in sport mode. I'm not shifting with my hand because I'm filming. But I mean, it is good. Let me tell you this. I have no complaint in terms of power holding the torque, and I definitely don't have any complaints in terms of the shift time. I do not even have a DSG tune on there. I've heard that if you do a DSG tune like the Unitronic or Eurocharge, it will be even better. I don't have one right now. I'll get it when I go full stage 2, probably next year, next season. But it's just hard for me to imagine you know, something better, just because this already satisfies me already. Like, I don't have an area where I say, oh, I wish it's better, you know, so I don't really know what to expect with the DSG tune. But I mean, let me just show you guys. Downshift, upshift. I mean, it holds the power. I'm on stage 1+, and it holds the torque very, very well. There's no power slipping between gears. There's no power slipping after the red line or each time you shift. The power kind of holds and builds it gradually. This feels like something that it's already tuned, but it's from the factories. Like, I have no complaint. Like, the shift is seamless. No tune, straight from the factory. I mean, what more can you expect? What more would you want? This is fantastic. For me, the second thing you guys should consider before you buy an RS3 is the look. Now, this is a small sedan. In Europe, this is a hatchback, but in North America, this is a sedan. And as you guys can see, it is not a big sedan. A lot of people think it's too squished. A lot of people think it looks better than hatchback. For me, I don't really like hatchbacks or sportbacks if you're in Europe, so I do prefer the sedan. However, I do think this car looks can be just a little bit bigger, but for me, in terms of driving, the size is perfect. Comparing this to the old S4 I had, you know, the handling is just so much better. It's so much tighter. Everything just feels more compact. But for looks, you know, it's up to your discretion. So obviously, this is the RS3. You guys can see the front. I think it's perfect. The front, I absolutely love it. From the side, I absolutely love it. However, if you come to the back, many people might think the trunk is too small. It's basically non-existent. I get what they're saying. I mean, if you definitely look from this angle, it's definitely not the biggest car, and especially the trunk is quite short. But regardless, I think it's a good look. Obviously, you know, people have different taste, but for me, I think it looks fantastic, especially when it comes to driving, which that's what you're supposed to focus on this car anyways, because all it wants to do is drive and perform on the road. But I mean, just look at the front end. I am so happy. I'm blown away every time I look at this car. It just looks amazing. I mean, it just looks so aggressive. I love all the grille, the lights, and also just the flare. I know the new version has even a wider fender flare, but for me, it looks good. And also, when it comes to interior, I think it's a personal preference, but for me, I love the RS3 interior. It is very, very simple. It's modern, but it's simple at the same time. You have a decent sized steering wheel. I love the look of it, even though some people think the RA steering wheel is better, but this gets the job done. I like the Alcantara. I love the instrument cluster. Basically, you have, you know, your different modes. So this is I guess the traditional way, but this is more like a sport display. It's simple, it's geared towards driving, and it works. So for me, I love the interior. I know for some people, you know, they want to change the steering wheel, they want to do a carbon fiber, all that stuff. But for me, I think, you know, it just looks good. It gets the job done, and most importantly, the car performs. The third thing, and I think the most important thing you should consider when buying an RS3 is the engine, how it performs, and most importantly, how it sounds. So this is a 5-cylinder engine. It performs out of this world for this price range. You can't beat it. Right now I'm on a stage 1 plus tune, and the best time I've run on a quarter mile with a 93 gas and also street tires, I'm running 11.3. That's pretty darn impressive. I've ran probably three races, never lost one of them. I ran against a Corvette Z06, C43 I believe, and I can't remember. Oh, an Audi S4, the B8.5 Audi S4. And this engine just has so much potential. I mean, first of all, you have the glorious 5-cylinder engine, and I have a CTS intake. It just sounds godly. And also, I have a Catless downpipe back there, and I have an AW SwitchPath exhaust. So for me, you know, this platform is just so easy to mod, and also it just sounds good. Let me give you guys a listen. Especially if you want to make this car a complete track car or a drag car, and you don't want to spend so much money, you know, it's definitely possible. If you do stage 2, which basically you need obviously an ECU tune, intercooler, turbo inlet, intake, and also a downpipe, whether that's Catless or Cata downpipe, it doesn't really matter. And that's probably going to run you about, I want to say maybe 6-7 grand, 5-6 grand ish, depending on obviously what brand you want to go with and how expensive are the parts and labor. But for me, roughly about 5-6 grand in terms of all the parts and stuff and the tune. And obviously, if you want to do more like a dog bone mount, a sway bar, all that stuff, that's up to your discretion. But for me, just get to the car to that level. If you want to run E85 or E50 blend, do a large injector. Yeah, 6-7 grand, I say, and you definitely have a 10-second car. You don't even need to have any sort of gut interiors. Even on street tires, I've seen people do high 10s in Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. So it's definitely capable of doing that. And also, it's just very easy to work on. There's nothing too complicated. You don't have to add you know, this and that. You don't have to change the turbo. If you can, definitely, if you want to go with a hybrid turbo or a big turbo, but for me, you know, on stock turbo, you're gonna win 90% of the race when it comes to just normal test and tune. Now, another thing you guys should consider buying a RS3 or owning an RS3 is the cost of maintenance and also the cost of finding mods. So for example, I guess let's go with the biggest, or I guess the most costly thing to replace, which is the brakes. Now the RS3 comes from the factory, have a 8-piston big brakes on the front. To replace these brakes, at least in Canada, from the dealer with the rotor and pads, you are looking at least a couple grand. A lot of people might think that is too expensive and, you know, it's not worth it. To be honest, this is probably the most the only major thing you need to kind of replace in the car. For example, I'm just going to use an example. If you do a E92 M3, right, that car needs frequent oil change, frequent service, and also the rod bearing is an issue on those cars. So you need to replace that at a certain mileage, and that will run you anywhere between $3,000 to $8,000 depending on where you are and, you know, who does the work. But for this car in today's age, and for this kind of RS car, is really not that bad if you think about it. You can definitely get aftermarket rotors and pads like the EBC red stuff or the yellow stuff, and for the rotors you can go with New Speed or 034. You don't really have to go with the OEM route if you don't want to spend that kind of money, but yes, even the aftermarket stuff will run you more comparing to, let's say, if you get an Audi S4 or an S5 or an A4, A3, S3, Golf R, that type of thing. Yes, it will be more expensive just because it is an RS car and also because of the 8-piston big brake kit. But any other maintenance is really not that bad. An oil change, maybe twice a year or once a year. DSG fluid flush, maybe do a once every 1,000 kilometers, so every 2 years, 3 years or so. And just normal maintenance here and there. You really don't really need to spend a whole lot of money and pay a whole lot of attention to on other things. So that's why I think if you look at the big picture overall, is really not that bad. It really doesn't require that much service to begin with, other than obviously the brakes. And I mean, if you drag the car or drive it hard, yeah, probably more frequent oil change, but oil change is going to run you what, like 150 bucks, 200 bucks at most. But it's really not that bad. Now let's talk about the parts. So it is harder, I think, to find parts for this car, or I should say it's not that harder to find, but the parts are going to be more limited in terms of brand or selection, and hence the price comes after, because it is an RS car and everything's just going to be more expensive, straight up, right? That's saying, like, comparing to an Audi R8 versus a Lamborghini Huracan, it's basically the same thing, but being Huracan, it's going to be more expensive, just like the Urus versus the RS Q8. Same car basically, but if you get aftermarket, stuff for the Urus, is going to be more expensive than the Audi. That's just the way it is. That's just how the brand is. That's just the prestige level. I'm not trying to brag like, oh, the RS car, but I did find that more brands, or the brands that carry parts for this car, aftermarket stuff, it's going to be more expensive compared to my old S4. For example, ECS tuning, the front lip, I think it's like, don't quote me, I think it's like 800 bucks USD for a front lip, carbon front lip, versus for the S4 I think it's about 600. So it's just more expensive because it's an RS car. However, people say you gotta pay to play, and that is true. So everything about this car is gonna be a little bit more expensive, including a turbo inlet, the intake, the downpipe. It's gonna have a little bit of a markup due to just being a RS car. And also because the RS car, not a whole lot of company, I'm talking about more budget-friendly ones, will have parts for this car. And also because the RS car, not a lot of people have it, so therefore company's gonna have slower time to design and produce parts for this car. Example, ECS tuning. I basically a lot of my my mods on the old S4, they're from ECS tuning, and ECS tuning basically carries everything you can imagine for the S4 and S5 platform. Even for the the Golf R, the GTIs and stuff, they have everything. For this car, they recently just kind of tapped into this car. So the front lip, the diffuser, the rear spoiler is coming out. They just came out with their own intake. So because it has less, I guess, people owning it, they are taking their time kind of developing it. They're not really in a hurry, just because the market is not that big in terms of a grand scheme. So yeah, you are going to have a little bit a longer wait, I should say, if you want a certain company to carry parts for this car. So that's something I think you should think about if you're someone that don't like to wait, especially if you're ordering the new 2022 RS3, and if you don't want to wait for a year or 2 years for a company to come out with aftermarket parts. Maybe that is something to think about. Just like the R8, the RS5, the RS6, the RS7, those are going to be harder and more expensive, for company to design and come out with their own parts as well. So I think overall it is a joy to own this car, to drive this car, but it is something to think about, definitely, just because it's an RS car and it is going to be more expensive and harder to find parts for it.